We are in the company today of Jane Ko, aka a Taste of Koko, recent winner of the Austrian Under 40 Award in the food, events, and hospitality category. Definitely our favorite influencer in Austin, Texas.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you. Thanks for, coming to the hot seat, joining the podcast. I think to start, it will be lovely to hear you talking about the beginnings of Koko, like who was Koko before being Koko. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. The ironic thing of being, I guess, Austin's OG food blogger is I was a very picky child. So born in Taiwan, family moved to the States when I was 3, only child. Very sheltered parents still. And I absolutely hated food. My mom would have to chase me around with a fork and try to get me to eat anything. I was very shy. I'm still very shy, which I think is contrary to what you might see online. But yeah, I grew up in a very small town, Port Lavaca, population of 10,000 people, small coastal town. And being in Texas, you kind of have a few university options. It was UT or Texas A&M. We didn't have the money to send me out of state. That was not an option. And so I picked UT, moved to Austin in 2007 to go to UT, and it was a culture shock. UT had a population of undergrad, 50,000. That's 5 times the size of the town I grew up in. And I was just up against all these people from Dallas, Houston, out of state people, and felt very small. And I started my website in 2010, got a domain called tasteofkoko.com.
Oh, well, from the very beginning.
Very, very beginning, I started with the website. So before social media.
Wow. So how made you, what was the main reason why you started the website?
Being at UT was really hard. Mm-hmm. I'm actually a winner of Longhorn 100, so big proponent of UT Hookem. But being in school with 50,000 other students was really challenging. And the other thing is money was, I wouldn't say a problem growing up, but it was always something that my parents were always like, we can't get that. You can't have that. We don't have money, You can't get the Happy Meal. Like, it was just all these things I wanted, but I was always told no. And so when I got to UT, I was like, okay, pretty early on realized academics was just not for me. Growing up, I never did well in academics, and I just really struggled through school. I also had really bad test anxiety. I went to the ER my first finals week. I just had such bad anxiety that I broke out in hives. And I just saw everyone around me just excelled in school, like loved going to lectures, would be best friends with the TA and like excelling all the finals and knew what they wanted to do in life, like go in finance or go to med school or dental school. And I felt like the system that we grew up in didn't fit me, and it failed me. And so when you're kind of pushed into survival mode, you start looking for alternative options. And I started working part-time jobs. I worked 4 part-time jobs, and I was like, okay, let me just start saving up some money, seeing what I can do to survive. And it wasn't a lot. I was making $8 scooping Dipping Dots at the UT football games, basketball games, making maybe some tip. And it was hard. But I felt like the system just had failed me. And that's why I started Taste of Koko, started the website, because I was reading a few national websites, and I thought it was super cool that these individuals had voices of their own. And I Googled how to build a website on Google, bought my domain on GoDaddy, and that's how I started.
So you started doing like blog posts
about recipes, and I had no readership for 2 years. I had like a restaurant, like a random restaurant reached out to me and was like, hey, we are this restaurant. Do you want to come over for free food? And we'd love for you to take pictures. And as a college student, I thought I hit the jackpot because, again, I was working $8 an hour and eating 99-cent chicken nuggets at Wendy's because I was still in college. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to come over, take some pictures, and you'll feed me for free. And that's how it started. I did one restaurant post, and I got a few readers. again, thought I hit the jackpot because I was blogging for 2 years with absolutely no one reading anything. And then another restaurant reached out, then another restaurant reached out. And all of a sudden I found myself sitting literally at the table with the journalists and food editors of our top magazines and publications in town.
Wow. Wow, incredible. So you mentioned there was some inspiration when you started, working on the website. Because I hear, and it will be really easy for you to focus on, oh, maybe I should be like a food photographer, or maybe I should work on restaurants or stuff like that. What made you decide that you wanted to be, more of an influencer in the food industry?
I actually really wanted to do fashion, and I had started a second, I guess, website. I was also trying to do YouTube. YouTube was really big in that era.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't have money for clothes. Like, just didn't have money, and you kind of need money to buy clothes. And so restaurants were my only option at that time because they just kept reaching out. And I didn't know you could make money as a food photographer. I was just shooting all these photo shoots for free, giving all the restaurants and local businesses all these photos for free. Naive 20-year-old didn't know that, I was looking up to these like great photographers, looking at Pinterest, looking at all these magazine spreads, didn't know that you could make a lot of money that way. But I only knew what I did was like, I didn't have money for food, so I'll shoot for free.
Yeah, but you were writing blog posts about these restaurants. So your forte was actually copywriting and stuff like that.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the strongest copywriter or writer. I really heavily depended on my photos. And I think that's what gave a Taste of Koko its name. Was early on, I quickly was known for my top-down shots where you would see my hands like holding a food, and you would just know. And I had this orangey filter that I would use, and you would just know if you saw that photo on Google, like somebody else was using it, people would tell me, they're like, I know that's your photo. They're using your photo. Yeah. It was such a strong, iconic way that I was shooting.
And how long it took you to kind of get to that look?
Probably 5 years. I didn't have any professional training, also like no money. So I started with a Canon EOS, whatever model it was, like a $300 camera. Then I upgraded. Right now I shoot with the Sony A7R III, I think. But we now live in the era of video. Unfortunately, I don't get to shoot photos as often as I would like to. But back then, like, it took me that long because I didn't have any training. Like, with every single photo shoot, I would learn something, right? And I would get better. And I think that also made it easy. Was a lot of our restaurant scene at that time was evolving. So you would see beautiful dishes in these beautifully interior design restaurants, and people were like, how are your photos so good? And I was like, I'm not shooting photos at home. It was different when I was doing recipes. Like, styling a dish is so much work, but shooting a beautifully plated dish that a chef made was much easier. And that's how I built a lot of my relationships. Was I would sit on the counter in the kitchens and the chef would let me eat from the pan. And I loved it. Like, unfortunately, I don't get a lot of that now. Times have changed, but that's how I built these relationships.
How you started. Yeah. When did you realize that there was something there, like something special, that you couldn't just stop anymore?
Probably 2018, when I was working with around 8 to 10 brands a month. So I didn't even realize it right away. In 2014, I started getting a few brands that were reaching out, like Godiva was like, can we send you a box of chocolates? And I was like, oh my God, like I couldn't afford Godiva growing up. New York Times reached out. We're like, we want you to be the face of Miami tourism. We're going to fly you out for a couple of weeks. You're going to have a PA. I don't even know what a PA meant. And I picked my own wardrobe. Like, I just made things up. I was like, yeah, totally. I know how to do a video shoot. I can model. I can talk. You want me to read a script? I can read a script. And it wasn't probably till 2018 when I was so busy with so many projects, and to the point where I was like, I would drive with my laptop in the car and would pull over whenever a contract came in just to sign it. And I felt like there's probably I want to say more money to be made, but I was like, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. Like, I probably need a manager to be looking over these contracts. Like, I feel like I don't know what I'm signing. And I think I felt like maybe I'm onto something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So what do you think is one of the biggest struggles becoming an influencer?
I think it's going to be relative to whoever you ask. But for me, I spent all of my 20s working and building my brand, but I also loved it. I am an only child. I love independent work. I don't do well with teamwork. I can work independently very well. So throughout my 20s, I would do three restaurant visits a day, get home around 10, take a shower, then get what is called a second wind. And I would edit and write until 3 a.m. And I loved it. Every single night, like, who in their right mind would do that? Like, no one. Like, you don't have someone who's like gun to your head, like, hey, you have to edit again tonight.
Yeah.
But I did it and I loved it. And that's also how I did my book. Like, I locked myself at home for 30 days and just like powered through finishing the book in 30 days, which is like kind of unheard of. But like, I think that's what I just really loved. But the thing is, things sacrifice. And so I sacrificed friendships. A lot of people didn't understand why I was just so obsessed with this craft, I guess. And also, people don't like being with someone who just wants to work all the time. They're usually not okay if you're like, okay, well, can I bring my laptop and I'll listen to you about how your breakup just happened, but I'm still listening. Can I just edit photos while you're talking? Like, nobody wants to be friends with someone like that. But that was the era that I was in. So I think friendships are really hard. Like, romantic relationships were hard. I had, I think, 4 relationships through my 20s. And looking back, they were all with people who loved work because they were busy. So therefore, I had to be busy. Was it healthy? Probably not. But I'm glad I did it in my 20s. Now in my 30s, now in a serious relationship, your person doesn't really like you working till 3 a.m. and having that flip schedule. Yeah. And so I don't think I could have done that in my 20s when I had my freedom.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's where in your 20s is when you have the freedom to try whatever you want to do, right? It's like you have that, if you want to try something, then, and you don't even know if it's going to work out, but I think you have the time to kind of try it and you kind of, you know.
You have the freedom, you have the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the sacrifice that you mentioned is kind of squeezing life, personal life into, you know, the whole thing, all the other things that you want to do.
It's different. Talking to other creators who are married, right, and have kids, and your kid is sick, then you're like, sorry, we're out for the week, right? And I get it. Like this year, or I would say 2 years ago, I started having like gut issues. I think all the restaurant food just caught up with me, and my holistic practitioner was like, you got to stop eating out. Like, can we do Tupperware? And I was like, yeah. Could you imagine if I showed up at the restaurant with a Tupperware of like veggies and then still do my video? Like, no one would trust me. But like my gut started not doing well, and every single practitioner over the years was like, you need to cut your stress down. Like, what do you do for work? You need to get a new job. And I was like, I can't. But even this year, like I was sick for like 6 weeks. Like, oh my God, like if I was in my 20s, I would have powered through that. I've been like, nope, I don't care. Unless I'm in the hospital with an IV drip. But this year I was like, you know what? I guess we're taking 6 weeks off. And it was nice being able to do that.
To kind of disconnect from everything. That's great. How often do you find yourself doing that? Or kind of making the decision, okay, I'm going to put this aside. I'm just going to enjoy this day or something like that.
It's been pretty often the last 2 years where I'm like, you know what? They don't need me to respond right away. Like I am neurotic for being on my email, responding every 5 minutes. And I think that's how I got so many projects is the moment an ad agency emailed me and was like, hey, Jane, we're with IKEA. We'd love to work 5 minutes.
Jump right away.
Hi, would love to work together. What do you have in mind? You want to jump on a phone call? I can jump on a phone call. And that's how you do it in the agency world. Yeah. Is they needed to answer a month ago. Yeah. And so whoever responds first and has that flexibility, you'd be like, yeah, I want to do that project. You get that project. Yeah. And that's how I did 100 projects a year. It was crazy, but that's how I did it. But like now in my 30s, like where, I have a partner, we're building a house, like I'm not responding to that email.
Yeah.
Probably in 30 minutes, but not in 5.
At least, yeah. But at least you already build the reputation, the website, the content, all that. Without that, obviously, you will have to kind of maintain that kind of hustle mind of I have to do it. I have to respond this email. I have to respond this call back, But at least in this point on your 30s, you already built that. You already had that. So, makes sense for you to kind of slow down.
Yeah, it's a little
bit
different. Is like, okay, if the brand really wants to work with me, they'll wait. They also understand there's an exclusivity. Okay, she's like exclusive with this other brand for another 20 days. Okay, we'll wait, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think if I had put in that groundwork beforehand, I wouldn't be in that position.
Yeah, 100%. So you mentioned your book. Can you tell us a little bit about your book? I know it's been out for a year or so?
I did Coco's Guide to Austin in 2019, but it's updated every year. And then I have Coco's Guide to Fredericksburg. So the Austin book, I loved books growing up. Like would have loved to work at a magazine, Bon Appetit, Condé Nast, like would have died to work there. Still would be honored to work at a magazine. And I regret not doing that because I think that would have taught me how to work within a team dynamic and also how to plan ahead with content. But I had a lot of publishers reaching out for me to do cookbooks. And I was like, hey, look, like I just eat. I'm not cooking at home. I'm not making this food. It looks real pretty because the restaurant did it. But everyone was like, okay, yeah, but travel books don't sell. Cookbooks do. Can you just make it, like figure it out? And I was like, no, I just won't do it. Like, I can't do a cookbook. I couldn't even make it up. And because no publisher was willing to do a travel book, they were just like, I talked to some, even the biggest one, like Nat Geo, they were just like, no, travel books don't sell. We won't publish it. So I had no option but to self-publish. And it was kind of like my love letter to Austin because I just felt like people still want recommendations.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I didn't expect the book to be such a success when it launched, but it was unexpectedly. People use it for gifts. A lot of companies, especially mortgage and real estate companies, use it for gifting as welcome gifts. And there was something about it that people just loved. And when it first launched, I didn't really have like a marketing plan. I was just like, I'll post it on Instagram. But when it started launching at stores, which I was originally just going to sell D2C, people would see it out in the wild. They're like, oh, it's at this coffee shop. And they would take a picture of it, post it on Instagram and tag me. So I would retag it or reshare it.
Okay.
And it became this game where people were like, oh my God, if I see it, I'm going to post about it because she'll repost it. And it was just like a game. Oh, she's at the airport. She has this coffee shop. She's at this other coffee shop. And like, it was just everywhere. And it was like this cute little yellow book that would just sit on the shelf.
Yeah.
And a lot of like, local vendors were like, how did you get that placement next to the cash register? Like you can't even pay to be there. And I was like, oh, did they put me next to the register? I didn't ask. I was like, I don't know. But awesome. I think it was this visibility that the coffee shops wanted to buy it because they knew I would come in maybe and post about it. Because I was really proud whenever a coffee shop was like, can we sell it? And I was like, okay.
That's great. So beside the book, which I'm sure it's one of your most rewarding moments, do you have a second most rewarding moment in your career?
It kind of ties into the second book. So I decided to do a second book on Fredericksburg, which I know Fredericksburg is not as big of a market, especially when I decided to work on this book, which I think was 2021. I always loved hospitality. So I love hotels. I love physical spaces. I always also would have loved to work at a hotel, but no hotel would hire me back then for some reason. I didn't have a marketing degree. I graduated in nutrition. And even though I had this big brand name, they would hire me for consulting, but they wouldn't hire me in-house. They were just like, you're not going to be a good 9 to 5, which is probably true. I'm more of like a 9 to 3, which nobody wants to work those hours. But I decided to do a book on Fredericksburg because me and a few partners bought a vacation rental a block from Main Street. And I just was like, yeah, I think this, like my gut was like, this makes sense. Let's start doing physical experiences and let's kind of we've been digital for so long, for 10 years, let's go physical. And so we did that project in Fredericksburg called Sunday House. We have 3 vacation rentals that we renovated. And to support that project / investment, I decided to write a book on Fredericksburg. And this is before the boom. So Fredericksburg has kind of exploded now, especially with over 100 wineries. A lot of money is going there. It's been called the new Napa of the States, which I think is kind of a stretch, but who knows? Maybe with some of these wineries that are coming, but that's why I did that project. And I was really excited because I think that kind of opened my eyes to other projects. And so since then, I'm involved in several hospitality projects, hotels, motels. My partner and I have several vacation rentals in the Austin area and Palm Springs. And so I feel like once you dip your foot in, you just kind of like get even deeper.
Yeah. You were mentioning agencies and you know, how could you explain how does that work for an influencer? Because I know how, you know, some people understand how it works with other agencies, production agencies, media agencies, but how does it work, the communication with an influencer?
Yeah, that's like a big question is like, do you make money and how? So for me, I think I got really lucky. Like I was just in the right place in the right time in 2014. I was the first food blogger of Austin. There was only like maybe 3 influencers in town at that time. So when Austin became kind of on the map because Facebook, Indeed, Dropbox started opening offices, brands like IKEA, Whole Foods, these big brands started looking at Austin to advertise. And at that time, there was a shift away from print media and TV media. And brands seeing, okay, let's work with influencers. Let's see who's in Austin / Texas so we can target this audience. And I was one of 3 options. And so I was getting like, I don't know, like 30 emails a day from agencies just wanting to do all different kinds of projects. And so even before I signed with a talent agency, and even now with the talent agency, we don't do outreach because we just haven't had to. Like I was having to respond. More than having to reach out. And it was just everyone. Like, I think once I started working with a few big brands, all of them came. And so I've worked with over 600 brands in the last 7 years of doing this full time. And how it looks is ad agency, you know, anyone like Edelman, 360, Ketchum, collectively reach out. Hey, Jane, we're working with X, Y, and Z client. They're launching this collection. We're interested in an Instagram reel and TikTok along with stories. Can you share with us our rates for usage? And are you interested? And before I signed with the manager, I would, you know, jump in and be like, absolutely interested. Love to do whatever budget you want. A little different now. When I signed with the manager, they jump on a phone call and they're like, hey, Jane's interested. What are you looking for? And what's your exclusivity? Some brands are like, we want 30 days. We want 1 year. In terms of exclusivity, it's also like, okay, we don't want her working, let's say if it's Target, then they're like, we don't want her working with H-E-B, Whole Foods, like anyone in grocer. That's when things get expensive. So if a project is $5,000 and they're asking for, let's say 60 days of exclusivity, it can jump up to $20,000 depending on what the brand is basically willing to pay. And I think these are a lot of things that happen behind closed doors that other influencers don't understand, where you're like, oh, it's okay, I don't mind. But you don't understand that's cutting you off from other potential work. And it gets tricky. I work with a lot of liquor brands. It's tricky with liquor because liquor was about 20% of my revenue. So for liquor brands, they would love to have exclusivity in the liquor category, but that's very expensive. Or even when I'm working with a wine brand, we'll say you can have the wine, like red wine exclusivity, but that's still going to cost you. And once that happens, contracts are signed, a rate is agreed on, then I'm off to the horses and I shoot the content. What's also changed recently in the last 3 years is a lot of brands and agencies want to see a script before you start shooting. And this is very different from when we were in the era of a photo and now being in the era of video is they kind of want a second play-by-play of how you're going to shoot this, which has been really hard because I don't know what I'm going to do until I start doing it. And so having to like prep that weeks in advance and be like, yeah, I'm going to walk into the house and I'm going to turn the key and I'm going to pet the dog. You know, it's hard, but they want to see that. And the reason for that is they've gotten content back that they don't like, right?
Yeah.
And reshoots are expensive. No one wants to do a reshoot. Once I shoot all the content, I have a very organized person. So I have Dropbox folders marked with all the years that I've been doing this. And every year has a folder on every single brand I've worked with. Within that folder, you see the contract, the brief, you see the content that I sent to them for approval. You see a Word doc with the caption. And then you also see screenshots of analytics. Mm-hmm. So once I shoot the content, I send my agent the Dropbox folder. They send it to the agency who then sends it to the brand, which is, it's a long, like up and down. Approvals, revisions happen. Then I post the content, and then there's always, you know, they want to see analytics. So I screenshot and insights from Instagram and or TikTok, goes in that same Dropbox folder, gets sent to the brand. Then I get paid whenever the money comes in. So I think that's another thing that influencers don't understand is you don't get paid
right away.
You don't. Sometimes you don't get paid 6 months later.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes you don't even get paid because the agency folded. And so these things happen. Wow. But for me, because I'm signed with a talent agency, there's delays. So it's the brand has to pay their agency. Then that agency pays my agency. Then I get paid. So a net 21 turns into like a net 100. And sometimes I don't get paid until 6 months later. So I think that's another thing that influencers don't understand. So you don't get paid right away. And if you're relying on this to pay rent next month, that's not happening.
That's why volume is important.
It is volume.
Yeah.
And because I was in such a scarcity mindset in my 20s of not, you know, having not grown up with money and not having money, I was like, I'll do every single project that comes in my inbox. And, you know, working with so many brands because I just didn't know when it was going to stop.
Yeah, exactly. Now, or is kind of the like kind of standard process?
It's just like an assembly line. I get the brand, we shoot it, it gets submitted, and it's just kind of a hamster wheel, if you would say. But I think that's another thing is what people don't understand with agency work is you have to work fast. So not even when response time, but they'll give you a deadline. I always try to get them the content within days because I check my email every hour because I'm OCD. When I see that email and they want a revision, I'm in CapCut making that revision within minutes and then send it to my agent. I'm like, okay, done. What did they say?
Yeah.
And that's the thing on how you get work because that agency is like, oh, she is dependable. She's fast. She's going to make us look good. She's always on time, if not early.
Yeah.
And that's how you get those projects that keep getting handed to you. But you can't do that if you have a team because no one's going to make a revision for you in the next minute.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you depend from the editor or the creative director to make decisions and stuff like that. So yeah, it makes sense. So how long it took you, because creating content is the hassle, you know, just by itself. So how long it took you to switching from still photography to learning how to shoot videos?
It wasn't hard because I had looked into YouTube early on. Like doing YouTube was too much work and you have to have a interesting life of things to talk about. So it wasn't hard. I probably started looking into video in 2018. Okay. I started with drones because drone photography was at its high at that time. And I was like, okay, this is the next big thing. Let me buy a drone. Let me do some drone footage.
So you learn how to fly a drone?
Yeah. So I learned. What? So I bought the drone, bought the second drone, started doing drone photography. Didn't do the license because remember, I don't do well test taking. So couldn't get my license. But yeah, like I think because I picked up drone videography editing pretty easily when Instagram and TikTok started shifting towards video, it was pretty easy for me to adapt to that.
At the end of the day, it's just you creating all this content.
Yes. And a lot of, I think locally, when I show up to shoot, they're like, where's your equipment? I'm like, it's just the iPhone. They're like, how's the quality so good? I was like, I don't know. I shoot on 4K. And I take a ton of clips. Like the video that you see on Instagram, that was 30 seconds. That's probably 100 clips. I just overshoot. Everything goes into Dropbox folder. And we just obsessively, I mean, editing doesn't take us that long now. Sometimes it's like 10 minutes of video were pretty fast. But I think there's like some sort of obsession about it, is like, how do we make this even better with every single video?
For people who might be watching this, how do you think, what will be your advice for creators that want to start jumping and start creating content?
I like what you said about the strengths. I think the other thing is, what is the why? When people are, I think a lot of it's easy is like, oh, I want to do what you're doing because you're making money. But I'm like, there's a lot of ways you can make money. Doctors can make 7 figures. Yeah. You just have to go through 4 years of school. And I think social media has also expanded so much after COVID. Is realtors, you can use social to boost your sales. Like there's a lot of, and then now LinkedIn influencers are a new thing. Like I saw a sponsored post yesterday and I was like, oh, this is new. I never saw this before. I think it's the why, and it's not, I think so for so long, it was so, what I do is so traditional. It was like the atypical influencer. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of different influencers now. There's a lot of like corporate, industry specific. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And I like what you said about, identify your strengths. I love independent work. I think a lot of people don't. And they're like, oh, can we go co-work? And I was like, I don't co-work. I fucking hate co-working. Like, I hate it. Like, no, I'm okay working at home and don't talk to me. And I can sit behind my computer for a few days. Like sometimes Josh goes out of town and he's like, did you even leave the house when I was out? And I was like, no, I've been sitting on the couch for a couple of days and there's like snacks all around me. But I love that. And I think a lot of people don't love that. And they think like, oh, your job is like socializing and being about and shaking hands and like having people take photos of you. And I'm like, no, that's like 0.01%. And I hate that. So yeah, it is important to find your strength. And I also think right now it's so different. Like if you are not good at video editing, hire someone. That didn't exist before. That's why I had to do it, because one, I didn't have the money, and two, people didn't exist for these kind of specific things. If you're not good at social media posting and you don't want to post at 9 p.m. every single night, because that's my best posting time, then hire someone to do it. If you're not good at copywriting, you can hire someone to do it. My advice is like, try to do as much of it that you can, because it's better and it's more authentic. But if you're not good at those things, then it's okay to consider hiring, because otherwise you're just not going to do it. And that's what I tell people. They're like, oh, I want to do that. I'm going to do Instagram and TikTok. And like, why aren't you doing podcasting? I'm like, just do one thing, because I can tell you're not going to do any of it, because that's too much for one person to do. You're going to get discouraged very quickly, because you see all these success stories of people like me or other influencers that have been doing this for a while, but you don't see that. You don't see the grind. Yeah. And social just, again, looks so different now. Yeah. I can tell you nobody sat with me until 3 a.m. the last 10 years.
Yeah. One of the last questions that I have is how you protect your personal life being involved in the influencer world. How you protect it from, all this. Because this is like a nonstop. That was the experience that I had in New York. My mindset was, I need to get relationships with agencies. I need to start filming videos that are related to what I want to be hired for. And it's really easy to get your mind settled in that mindset and kind of forget that there are other things that you need to take care of, like family, friends and stuff like that. But now that you are in this position, how do you protect your personal life from all that?
It's a balance. I like this question because I think that's also something that influencers or just the general public don't understand, is every time I share something, it makes me more vulnerable, right? Every single time I share a project that we finish, it makes me vulnerable, because they're like, oh, she just, it looks like she's making all this money or doing all the, and I'm like, no, you didn't understand. We're sleeping on the ground trying to renovate that house. But I chose not to share that because it's not cute. I think it's a balance. I pick and choose when I feel comfortable about sharing certain things. I think the last couple of years, I've definitely gotten more hermity, if that makes sense. I think the other thing is, people in your industry are always going to be the ones that are going to grab at you. And so naturally I've always been more shy. So I've always kind of kept to myself. I don't hang out with a lot of influencers. They don't invite me to go get happy hour. I was kind of sad about that. That's okay. But I just kind of keep to myself. And I think that also keeps you protected versus people who will keep asking like, oh, what are you working on? Or how'd you do that? Okay, well, can I help you with that? Can I do that? I think when you keep to yourself, it keeps you protected. And then also being conscientious of what you share online. Like when Josh and I first started dating, like people are just so nosy. Like even before I was dating him, I was dating other people and people were just so nosy. Like, oh, what reservation were they going to be at? Like once we got us to a restaurant, then it got out. Like I definitely learned my lesson with that. And so when I started dating Josh, I didn't share a lot of stuff online because I was like, I'm going to keep this relationship to myself. Like people don't need to know. They'd see us out and about, but like I just wouldn't share anything. And I think that kept our relationship very protected. And I wasn't sharing all these projects that, you know, like I talked about, like Sunday House. I talked about that project a year after we were finished versus the actual process. Also because I didn't know if it was going to work out or not because we were renovating. I think that's the irony of social is like you think there's a lot of things that are being shared and I think people think that they know everything about my life, but they're only seeing like 10%.
Yeah. Probably last question. If you were able to work with a dream brand for you, do you have like a dream project that you would like to kind of, I'm going to make it happen next year or something like that?
I don't know. Because I feel like I've worked with so many brands. I've worked with 600 brands. So,
but those are brands that have reached out to you, right, for work. But is there anything in specific that you would like probably reach out to and say, hey, let's work together? Besides Still Studios, of course.
Yes, of course. I think for me, I think what I've always done is pretty authentic to my timeline is whatever I happen to be going through, it felt aligned and I would be excited to work on those projects. So the season and the timeline that I'm in is Josh and I are planning a wedding in the fall and a wedding in 2025.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're also building our first custom house in Austin. So that's been a labor of love. And so my head just kind of goes to that is like, what are authentic ways to integrate brands in that space? For the house, we have like 10 brands on board. So I've been pretty excited because a lot of them were dream brands.
Wow.
So I don't know. I'm kind of caught off guard. I don't know.
It's okay. No worries. Because you mentioned brands reaching out to you, but I thought maybe Koko has a brand in mind that she would like to approach.
Well, that's the thing is once upon a time, I had all these wish lists of all these brands I wanted to work with. And most of them I've worked with by now. But I think what people don't understand is most times, especially if it's a bigger brand, they're probably not going to like the idea that you want to do because there's so much red tape.
Yeah.
So like a brand like Target, dream brand, would love to work with Target again. Give them too much of my money, would love some of my money back. But with Target, they probably have 10 agencies on retainer.
Yeah.
Just in advertising for all the different departments and like whatever. And so when you go to them and you pitch them an idea, they're not going to go for it because a lot of them sat in this boardroom a year ago and decided what the next 12 months were going to look like, what audiences they were going to target, how the ad spend was going to look. 50% will still go to print, 10% will go to online, 10% will go to influencers. Okay, for influencers, we want to work in these markets. We want, the moms that are married with the first kid because we know we can sell these supplements or whatever. They already have these timelines. So I used to have these wish lists of like, oh my God, I want to work with this brand because this is the story I can sell.
Yeah.
They don't go for it. And I get it. So it's hard for me to say like,
Yeah, 100%. Well, Coco, it's been a pleasure to have you. Congratulations again on your wedding.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your home. I've seen pictures so far. Trevor shared some with me. Looks gorgeous.
Thanks, Trevor.
Shout out to Trevor, K2F Entertainment. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you. I hope it's not the last time we have you here.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, keep liking, sharing. Thank you very much.